But thank you all for coming. We're really happy to be presenting to you today. So I'm Mitch O'Neill. We'll be talking about iMapInvasives. So usually when we present on iMapInvasives, we talk about how to report to iMapInvasives, how to record observations of invasive species. But today we recognize that we have a special group organized, a bunch of people that have experience with botany. And so we want to leverage that to help with a different aspect of iMapInvasives, which is reviewing the records that come in. And so we'll talk about that in more detail as we go. But I did also want to mention that on the right hand of this slide, there's some instructions to set up an IMAP account. So if you don't have an IMAP account or you're not sure, haven't logged in a while, there's some instructions up there. So you go to nyimapinvasives.org and there's a login button at the top right, which brings you to the account portal. And you can log in at the top, or you can create a new account at the bottom. And this will send you an email that you can check and accept the user agreement. And if you get stuck, I think we'll briefly review this again later. I just wanted to get this up there if people wanted to try it at the beginning as we're getting started. And so I'll start with some background, and then Jen, our invasive species biologist, will talk about the confirming process in more detail. So as mentioned, we're part of the New York Natural Heritage Program. Our mission is to facilitate biodiversity conservation by providing comprehensive information and scientific expertise on rare species and natural ecosystems to natural resource managers and other conservation partners. And we're a partnership between the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation and SUNY ESF, or the SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry. And we are housed in the Albany office of the DEC. And some projects you might be familiar with from us are the conservation guides and the trees for tribs. And you can find more about those with those links. And I also have the link to create an NY-IMAP-Invasives account if any of you still want to do that. And so the New York Natural Heritage Program is known for its rare species work and biodiversity work. And since invasive species pose a threat to rare species and biodiversity, one big part of the New York Natural Heritage Program is the Invasive Species Database Program, and that's where Jen and I work. So the biggest project here is the iMapInvasives database, but we also work on some other projects, including the database and survey that boat stewards use across the state to survey boaters and try to track aquatic invasive species going between water bodies. And we also work on prioritization models, which are built to help natural resource managers prioritize their limited resources onto the areas and the species that will provide the best outcomes. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with invasive species, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, we're defining invasive species as species of plants, animals, insects, and pathogens that are, one, non-native. So they are from outside of New York. They originate outside of New York, and they are also negatively impactful. So some sort of harm to the environment, economy, or human health. So things like bittersweet, which can wrap around a tree and pull it down. Hemlock adelgid, which can kill hemlocks. Species like that. And I have this picture of the invasion curve on the right. So invasive species are a huge problem, but what can we do to protect our natural resources? So that depends on how widespread the species is. So for a species that's new to the region, we can focus on prevention, monitoring. If a small population pops up, we can eradicate it. If it's more widespread, the priorities change to more keeping it contained in the areas it currently is and not letting it spread out of those areas, or some more long-term management for very widespread species. So it's very important to understand how invasive species are distributed across space for us to strategize how we can manage them. And this is where iMapInvasives comes in. So IMAP is used by several jurisdictions across North America, so US states and one Canadian province. In New York State, specifically, it is the centralized invasive species database to support PRISMs, state agencies, and other partners working on invasive species issues. So of course, we provide species distributions and reports, but we also provide email alerts, which allow for early detection. So if someone reports an invasive species in a certain PRISM, that PRISM will get an alert that that record was submitted. So it helps with rapid responses. And we also have web map services, so our data can be displayed online, and we allow for tracking control efforts and results. And I just mentioned PRISMs a couple times, so many of you might already be working with your PRISMs, but for those of you who are not, they're partnerships for, excuse me, regional invasive species management. So they do management, prevention programs, surveying, habitat restoration, volunteer efforts, education. They do a huge variety of work. And so these are the 8 PRISMs across the state. Some of you might be particularly familiar with the Capital Region PRISM because they're actually hosted in the Cornell Cooperative Extension office in Saratoga County. So I encourage you to connect with these PRISMs if you're interested. And so where is the data from IMAP coming from? In the beginning, it was really important to leverage pre-existing data sets from federal agencies, local state agencies, researchers, museums, local nonprofits, et cetera. And those gave a really good idea of what the distribution of invasive species was at that time. But the complication is that invasive species are constantly spreading. There's new invasive species arriving. So we really need a continuous flow of data into the database to have a current understanding of invasive species distributions. And so data entered by community scientists and professionals has been very important. And so volunteers and professionals across the state can upload data to iMapInvasives, and those records are set to unconfirmed by default. And then we review those records, and if the species ID and the picture match, then they can be confirmed. And this has mainly been done by experts up until now. So we've gotten to this point where more records are coming in than we could possibly confirm alone. So that's a problem, but it's a great problem to have. So we're really happy to have all this data coming in so we can have a good idea of invasive species distributions, but we're trying to figure out how we can better manage this. And so we're here because we need your help. So we need your botany skills, particularly common, like widespread invasive plants are reported to the database in very large numbers, and we could use the trained eyes of master gardeners and other volunteers to look at those records and help us confirm them. And Jen will talk about that in more detail. But I did want to mention that if any of you are interested in learning more about entering data in iMapInvasives, there are some resources we have for you. So if you go to our website, imapinvasives.org, you can click on the training tab or just put training in the URL, and you can go to our self-guided training. And we have some help docs that will help you. We also have our YouTube channel linked, and we have a new playlist that tries to get you set up on iMapInvasives and some short videos that you could check out. And you could download the app on the App Store as well. And the instructions on our site will also guide you through that. And so today we're going to focus on the online part of iMapInvasives, and generally we recommend using Chrome or Firefox or Safari, but not Microsoft Edge or Internet Explorer. And so this is the online web application where you can access the database from your browser. And now I think I'll turn it over to Jen. I'll also take a look at the chat box to see if there's any pressing questions.
Great, thank you, Mitch. All right, and thank you all for attending. This is really exciting. I see that there's upwards of 65 participants, so yay, this makes us very excited to think that we might have some help with reviewing records and participating in the state invasive species database. So like Mitch said, iMapInvasives serves as the centralized New York State invasive species database, and we receive a lot of data, both from professionals and from volunteers. We have close to 250,000 total records that we've accumulated in the database since 2010. And this is for all species that we track. There's about 400 species of plants and animals and microorganisms within the database system that meet that criteria of non-native and causing some type of harm or potentially causing some type of harm. We do err on the side of tracking a species even if we don't know it's invasive yet, because we want to collect that data. If somebody thinks that an ornamental, say, perhaps might be kind of jumping the fence, so to speak, and starting to escape into natural areas, we really need that information to be able to conclusively say whether or not that's causing negative impacts. And so we take data quality very seriously. That's one of the principles that the heritage programs are really good at. And so that's something that we've brought over into this invasive species data world as well. We have lots of presence records. So these observation points that are entered through the mobile app and that online interface that Mitch mentioned. And every time those are entered through those interfaces, they come in as unconfirmed. And they only get switched to confirmed records once somebody has reviewed those records for accuracy. So in this little screenshot here, those pink records, or the pink dots that you see, are the unconfirmed records, while the green dots are confirmed ones that somebody has had a chance to review. And we're going to go into the live database here in a moment, and you'll be able to see that in more detail. But I wanted to talk a little bit also about why we need to be confirming records and why we need your help. And so, as I mentioned, there's lots of data coming in all the time. So in 2020, we had over 15,000 records that were entered through the mobile app and the online interface. So this is a mix of professionals and volunteers, but those are all records that are coming in as unconfirmed and need somebody's eyes on them to review them. We also get big batches of records from our professionals that are in the field, like through the PRISM network that Mitch mentioned, or maybe through state agencies. And sometimes these big batches of records do come in as confirmed, and they undergo internal reviews by those organizations before they actually come into IMAP. So you might actually see a lot of confirmed records in the database that don't have a photo, say, and that's usually the reason why. And so, getting to this topic of confirming records in IMAP, why do we need to do this? Well, we all get something wrong occasionally, right? Even the experts might occasionally click on the wrong species name before they upload the record and unknowingly enter something incorrectly. Or it just might be that someone thinks that they got the identification correct, but it turns out to be a different species. This is widely promoted as a citizen science tool, in addition to being used by our natural resource professionals across the state. And so, sometimes our users in the system are beginners, to the botany world or to the natural resource or to the ecology world, where they're just learning these new species. And we want to encourage users to enter things even if they're unsure. Especially with some of those high priority species, you hear a lot, maybe you've heard about the spotted lanternfly recently. Say you see something that you think matches what you saw on the news a week or two ago, go ahead and take that photo and report it. We'd rather people err on the side of getting something wrong than possibly missing a really important early detection. And another reason why this is all so important is this data is being used. It's being used constantly by researchers across the state. And when that happens, we only dole out those confirmed records. We don't redistribute or have export permissions for those unconfirmed records. So when people are using the data, they're using the confirmed data. We also share this information with other national databases. And so once again, it's that confirmed data that's being shared, not the unconfirmed. And this data is being used every field season for action and for regional planning by those natural resource managers. So the PRISM leaders are looking at this, the state agency experts, and so forth. So obviously we need some help. There is a huge backlog of unconfirmed presence records. We do have a network of professionals who are reviewing the high priority species that come in. So things that are lower down on that invasion curve that Mitch was showing you, like those early detection species, these new things like spotted lanternfly, or things maybe that have been here but are very high impact and very low abundance, like the Asian longhorn beetle. Those kind of things, we have state agency and PRISM staff who are reviewing those records as they come in. They have email alerts set up for those unconfirmed records. They get in there right away and they review those records. But it's really these common terrestrial plants that we have a very large backlog on. All of you are probably familiar with Phragmites and multiflora rose. We're not actually going to go into species identification on this webinar, but I know all of the PRISMs have done species identification webinars, and many of those are recorded that, we could always point you towards those if you needed help with that. But those are the types of things that we're looking for help in. And, and one of the reasons is many times these common invasive species are the things that our volunteers and our citizen scientists are entering as their data points, because they're most familiar with it and they're seeing it everywhere they go. And they really need that encouragement that their data is being looked at. So even though it's another point of Phragmites that might be in a sea of other points of Phragmites, it's still really important to help with this overall goal of getting the records confirmed and encouraging our volunteers to continue to enter more data. And so that's why we're starting with all of you. We're asking the Cornell Cooperative Extension Master Gardeners for help, because you know plants and you know them well and how to identify them and in many cases how to care for them, or if it's a weed, how to get rid of it. And plus the Master Gardeners are really known for volunteering and sharing their knowledge. And so you are our first group, kind of our guinea pigs of volunteer confirmers that we're tapping into. And this was at the recommendation of some of the statewide CCE staff. They're saying that the Master Gardeners might be this wonderful group to tap into for potential confirmers in the database. So the first thing you're going to need to know is for confirming is whether or not you have actual permissions within the database to be able to confirm records, because we can't just give everyone confirming permissions, right? You have to take some type of training and have some type of expertise. And so these permissions are actually doled out by the iMapInvasives administrators. So that's myself, Mitch, and Meg Wilkinson, who's also on the call today. And so during this, we're going to ask if you're interested in the confirming powers. You can chat in the chat box to Mitch and Meg, and they're going to try to get people set up as we go through the webinar with those different permissions in your user account in IMAP. So you have to have your account set up and activated. And then they're actually going to go into your account permissions and give you the ability to confirm terrestrial plants. And for this initial volunteer confirming pilot, we do ask that you stick to the common invasive species And I will show you a list of those later as we get further into the webinar. All right, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a live demo. So I'm going to take the screen sharing away from Mitch. Let's see. And here we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera just for more Wi-Fi that we're all needing these days in the world of Zooms and lots of internet meetings. All right. And so here I'm on our iMapInvasives, our New York iMapInvasives website. And there's our login button up in the upper right. And this is also where all those training resources that Mitch was talking about are held. So a lot of good information on this website. And I'm just going to go ahead and go to the login page. And let's see here. I'll go ahead and log in. All right. And if you've never logged into IMAP before, this might be your first peek at what this international database looks like. So we do have other states and provinces as part of the iMapInvasives network. So they're all using the same platform to collect their invasive species data. And so you'll see a lot of information when you first log in, but you can easily center in on New York just by moving your mouse around and scrolling. And so the first thing that we're going to do is, before I get into the map, which I know has all the fun parts of this, first we're going to go to this upper left-hand corner where there's a little leaf. It kind of looks like a little kudzu leaf with a menu icon, and I hit that menu icon. And I want to go to my account. So your account will show you what your permissions are. And so here I am in my own iMapInvasives profile. I had selected the Master Gardeners organization as my primary organization, and you can sign up to, or you can ask to join that organization as well. You do want to make sure that your email address is correct, and remember that your username throughout IMAP is your email address. And so I'm going to scroll on down here, and I'm going to look at the very bottom where it says Jurisdictional Privilege. And so this is your permissions for whatever states that you're signed up for. Here it's for New York. And do you see like there's little X's next to these different taxonomic groupings? But I have a checkbox next to confirm plant terrestrial. And so this is how I know that I have my proper permissions to confirm terrestrial plants. If you, after this, if you still don't see your settings, then you can email us at the IMAP help desk and ask for those permissions to get added. All right, and just a quick thing, if you do want to sign up for just to have the Master Gardeners organization as your main organization, what you would need to do is actually use this little edit tool to edit your profile. And if you scroll on down, you can actually request to join an organization. And that's when you would type in the Master Gardeners, which I don't think it's going to come up because, oh, yeah, there it is. So if the Master Gardeners Cornell Cooperative Extension, and then you would hit this button that says request to join, and then you have to save it. And then that will send an email to the administrators for that organization. And as I'm saying that, I'm making a mental note to self that we should check in with Ashley later to make sure that we have the proper CCE staff set up as administrators for this organization within IMAP, just to make sure that everyone's in the proper place. All right. So now I'm going to go back to the map. All right, and so when you do log in, you'll notice all these orange circles or hexes across the country, and of course in New York State. And this is showing all the data turned on. So like I said, even in just New York, it's close to 250,000 data points. So there's a lot of data, and of course they have to be generalized at this large zoomed out level, or else, the whole system would just go haywire with so much if you have individual data points for each of those. But as you zoom in, you'll get to the more detailed level of specific points at specific locations, which I'm going to show you here in just a moment. But before we jump into that, I just want to give you a basic orientation of how the iMapInvasives map is laid out. So here on the left-hand side, if you can see my cursor, we have these map navigation tools. So you can zoom in and out with the plus and minus. You can go to your location if you have that location permission enabled on your web browser. And you can also search for locations. So we'll do that here in a moment, like, your zip code or your town, you can do that there. And then across the top, we have action tools. So you can actually enter data here or with the mobile app, but if you're doing it online, you do it here. You can filter records, which we're going to use here in a moment, and so forth. And then on the right-hand side, we have all the different map layers. You have different imageries, like you can turn on the satellite imagery or the topographic maps. So you have a lot of options there, but you can also, have the different layers turning off and on the data layers. And so we'll get into that in a moment as well. All right. And so now I'm going to go over here to our little location finder, and I'm going to type in Albany, New York. So it'll just zoom over to Albany, and you can see a little point is plopped down for Albany itself. And so when it takes the map a moment to spin, so now that I've zoomed in, it's trying to calculate or change all those orange circles to the actual point locations of each of those individual species. And so just within Albany County, you can see that there's quite a bit of information that's there. So now I'm going to go over to these map layers on the right-hand side. And there's this layers on and off. And this is where all your data is, or everyone's data, I should say, all of IMAP's data. So right now we can see that just the confirmed presence records are turned on. But if I want to, I can also turn on the unconfirmed records, because that's really what you're going to be looking at, right? As a confirmer, you're looking for things that have not yet been confirmed. And so you can see that those pink points have now shown up in addition to the green points. And, there's some other things you can do. You can actually make those points lighter or darker by adjusting the transparency. And there's also some other nice features on here. Like you can turn on the county boundaries if you'd like to. I'm zoomed in quite a bit, but you might have seen the county boundaries show up there along the Hudson River between Rensselaer and Albany County. You can also turn on the prism layers. Once again, I'm zoomed in so you won't see those, but we also have the town boundaries now. So the local municipal boundaries, let's see. That might take a moment to load up because I think there are a lot of them. But that should give you the town boundaries on the map. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you, we have the confirmed and unconfirmed. I'm going to go over here to filter records, because right now we have every single species turned on and it gets a little chaotic on the map. And so let's just start with one species. Here on the filter records, you have a lot of great options. If you wanted to quickly just see your records, you can use this little toggle. But you can also say look for just terrestrial or aquatic species and so forth. But what I want to do is type in a species name. It is helpful sometimes to toggle the species list to New York species, because that uses the species names that we're more commonly familiar with here in New York. But I'm going to look for I got to spell it right, multiflora rose. There we go. As you start typing in the species name or the common name, it should appear. And then you want to hit that apply filter button. And so this will take a moment to spin. You'll want to hit this little X to close that box while it's spinning. All right. And so now we have the map solely looking at multiflora rose. You notice a lot of those points disappeared, but you can notice that there is indeed quite a bit of multiflora rose that's been reported around here. And so here, let's go zoom in on these little spots over here up in colony area. And since we are focusing on just the unconfirmed points, I'm going to go ahead and I can toggle off those green dots. I can turn off the confirmed presences. So see how I did that? I just, hit that little toggle button and it made them disappear. I can do that to the pink records too, but then you have nothing on the map. So I just want to leave those pink dots on there. All right. And so I know that these are just unconfirmed multiflora rose observations. So I'm going to click on one of these here. And when I click on a point, it'll show up in this table that pops up down here. So I see that's a multiflora rose that was submitted earlier this year. And then you can do a couple things. You can actually make that point that you just clicked on flash. You see how it's flashing red there? But what I want to do is I want to go into the record details. So I'm going to hit details, and that opens up a new tab on my browser. And this gives me all the details about this one individual record. And you can see that there is a photo that's been submitted. We'll click on that in a moment. But I want to distinguish that from this photo over here on the right-hand side, which is your general reference photo. And this is, just coming from a standard database of species photos. So this is not the photo that you're basing your identification on. This is, this is not the one, submitted by the user. This is one that's just like in a fact sheet about that species. So what we want to focus on is the photo that was actually submitted by that user. And I also like to look at the comments field too, because sometimes that has some good information that tells you a little bit more about the context of what they just submitted. And then you can scroll down too. There's a lot of information that sometimes the user will fill in and sometimes they won't. You can see that this user filled in the distribution. They tagged a project to it. So it's a Siena College and Town of Colony project. And you can see like these confirmation fields have not been filled in yet. Because you can also see that over here, this record is still marked as unconfirmed. It's pink on the map and it has this unconfirmed status. So what I typically do is I come in here and I click on the photo, first of all, and I look at the species of interest there. And so this is definitely looking like multiflora rose. Many times you can zoom in on the photos. And here, this is one of the key traits that I zoom in on when I'm looking for multiflora rose, this fringe petiole. Here, that's a good way to distinguish the invasive roses from the native roses or non-invasive ones. And so I feel very confident that this is multiflora rose. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my presence record. So that opened the photo up in a new tab. So I want to go back to my record and I'm going to confirm this. And so since this is a good record and I feel very confident, I can use this button. See, we have this easy confirming button here. I'm going to push that button. And just so you know, that button is only exposed, like you can only see it if you are a confirmer for that species group. So since I have confirming powers for terrestrial plants, that confirming button is there. And it pops up this box for more information from me. Because and this is really important for the data quality aspect of confirming records. When you are a confirmer, you kind of have this responsibility to document how you confirm that species and putting your name to that confirmation. And so the first thing it asks you for is a confirmation method. And so for your purposes, most of these are going to be photo ID. There are some other options here, but I think for this, for this group, you would be sticking to confirming this photo or confirming this species via the photo that's entered. So I'm going to hit photo ID and species verified by, and so this is where I get to give myself props. Like I verified this record, and so I'm going to give myself credit for that. And that's really important too. We can, especially for our tallies at the end of the year, it's great for us to be able to show that we have this network of confirmers who are reviewing the records. And then you can add something to the confirmation comments. It's not as crucial for some of these really common species, but it it is helpful, to know how you were able to confirm this record or not. And so I'm going to put down that it had the fringed petioles that I could see. It might have been, in many cases, the photos are not quite clear enough, but I can tell just by the general leaf shape or the plant growth. Once you've seen enough photos of multiflora rose, you can start picking out those, just the gestalt of it from even a blurry photo sometimes, and feel pretty confident about that species. So I'm going to go ahead and hit continue. And then now you can see, you can see that this confirmed status has now been updated. And I did refresh the record, and it changes to that green point on the map. So yay, we found our first record to confirm. It was an easy one. And actually, if I scroll down, now you can see that those confirmation comments have been filled out. All right. So that's one of the nice ones when it's really easy, it's really clear that that's what you need to do. But, of course, there's always going to be exceptions to the rules. There's going to be records that are not quite as easy. So here, I'm going to give you some examples of that. I'm going to go ahead and close this little box with the X. But before I do that, I want to be able to show you another tool. So before, I was able to just click on the point and it shows me that record. But what if I wanted to look at all these records at once? So that's where I can use this Identify Measure tool. And I would click Area. And so essentially, I'm drawing a shape on the map by clicking. And then I double click to end it. That, I'm telling the program that I want to get a table of all of these points right there underneath this shape. And that kind of helps, like once you've gotten into the groove of things, you can start going through this pretty quickly. All right, and so let's see if I can see that there's a number of records with Mary Beth on there. There's a number of records from the Siena College ones. And this is where that the flash feature under task comes in handy, because now I can see, oh, okay, this record that I've highlighted is actually that one that's way up in the upper corner. So let's go ahead and take a peek at this one. And so this is another person from Siena College. I'm going to click on the photo. And it's starting to look like multiflora rose. If I want to zoom in there, that you'll see that this becomes an issue with a lot of photos that are taken by users. I can see every stitching in that person's shoe, but I can hardly see the actual plant that they were trying to take a photo of. And so this is one of those examples where, the photo's blurry. After you've gone through quite a few confirmations, you'll start to become it'll make you more consciously aware, I'm sure, like while you're taking photos. Like if this person would have maybe put their hand right below the leaf or a piece of paper, it would have forced the camera to focus actually on the leaf instead of on the background. So that's one thing. I mean, I can, just from looking at this record, I can see that, yes, this is multiflora rose. If I scroll up a little bit, I can get a little more of that record in focus, which is good, or that photo in focus. So I do feel good about this, but I know from someone who has confirmed a lot of records, it does get frustrating when you see a lot of fuzzy photos. If you were not able to confirm this record because the photo was too blurry, then we do have a way to at least document that you've looked at it and just leave it as unconfirmed. And I do that quite a bit. I don't want to delete the record entirely, but I don't feel confident enough to confirm that record based on the photo that's provided. And so in that case, you do not hit this confirm button because that confirms the record, obviously. But instead, you want to go up to this upper right-hand corner where there's an edit button. And so I hit that edit button. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down to where those confirmation comments and fields are. And what I'm going to do is select insufficient data to confirm. And, I can put my name here. And then I can put comments like photo too blurry to tell, to ID. And so this way, and then of course I have to scroll up and I have to actually save that record. I'm not going to do it this time because I do feel like I could confirm that record, but this is just an example of what you would do. So remember, you don't want to hit that confirmed box or the button, but you just want to hit that, select that insufficient data to confirm and put a little reason why. And in some cases, the actual observer might, if they've signed up for the email alerts for changes to their own record, they'll get an alert that somebody has at least looked at their record, and then they could log in and see that that comment is there, and that might prompt them hopefully to go out and take a more clear photo of that species and upload it. All right, so back to the map. Let's see what else we have on here. We have a record down here that here is down near this country club, entered by someone I've never heard of, this Jennifer Dean person. And I'm gonna hit details on that one. So let's look at this record for multiflora rose. So it's been entered as multiflora rose, but let's look at this photo. That photo definitely does not look like multiflora rose. This actually looks like garlic mustard. And I feel very confident that this is garlic mustard. I can see the flowers just barely starting to form. That rosette is very, you know, once you've seen it a few hundred times, you know, you have a good feeling for those rosette leaves of multiflora rose. So going back to this record, I now need to change the species name on this because I see that it was incorrect. But it is another invasive species. So this is going to be a different case than if it was a different native species. But since this was another invasive species that's in our database, what I can do is go back to this edit tool. I don't want to confirm it, right? Because it's not the right species yet. I want to go to this edit tool. And if you notice now, next to the species name, there's a little pencil icon that says edit species name. And so now I can type in garlic mustard, because that's what it is. And what that does is it changed that species name. You can see it change it there, and I can go ahead and save that. And now I feel ready to confirm this. So what I can do is go to that confirmation method again, do photo ID. You'll see in a moment when I get to the rules that you wouldn't confirm one of your own records, but this is just for demonstration purposes. And then for the confirmation comments, I do want to put that I changed that species name. You know, in case that person does get back in here and check over their record again, they'll know what they did incorrectly then. Change species from multiflora rose. And I usually put per photo. And so I can continue there. And so now it's confirmed as garlic mustard. And if I scroll down, then I can see, you know, that's been documented that it was originally entered as multiflora rose. But because of the photo, I've changed that to its current species of garlic mustard. All right. And so another scenario that you might run into is that the species is incorrect, but it's a native species. So it's not actually on that list of species that I could choose from to be able to change to, in which case that record does need to be deleted. And so you have to actually contact us at the iMapInvasives help desk and, you know, give us the record number. So say if I'm in one of these records, you see this presence record number here. That's the key bit of information that we need to be able to easily get to that record and then delete it from the map. It's still actually retained in the database, but it's now hidden from view, and we always document why we remove that. Another quick and easy way to share a record with someone is to just copy the URL, because if you see here in the web link at the very end of this, you know, long URL, that's actually the presence ID number. And so if you copy that out and send it to someone, then they can easily click on that link once they've logged into IMAP and find that record. All right, so we've went through, you know, how to confirm a good one, how to document something that maybe is too blurry, so you don't have sufficient evidence to confirm, you leave it as unconfirmed. we looked over how to change something, how to change a species that's incorrect, and then what to do if something is a wrong species and it's native. So that means it's not in our database. Another
Jen,
reason, yes, did I hear
this
something?
is Meg.
Yeah.
I'm just going to recap that. So for everyone, I never confirm records, so I'm learning too. And I just want to clarify. So if it's right, if the picture is good, the location is good, a water thing is in the water, a terrestrial thing is on the land, then it's easy.
Yes.
You hit that confirm button, you answer those questions, and you're done.
Mm-hmm.
The other two cases you covered, if the species is different, or if the picture is bad, or if the location was bad, you would need to do that edit button, and the process is just differently, correct?
Yes. And,
Okay.
things, and actually, yeah, that's great to kind of summarize that. And I hadn't gotten into location yet, but with the species being bad and not on our invasive species list, and then that's when you have to contact us. And right, and Meg brought up a great point with the location. So, for terrestrial plants, you expect those to be, on dry ground. Aquatic plants, you expect them to be in water. And so, if something looks obviously wrong, we of course don't expect you to, track down the exact location or field or something. We have to have some degree of assumption that the person was accurate enough in their location setting. But if it's obviously a wrong location, then definitely contact us as well, because we have ways to correct that too. Just a couple quick general rules that we have. I did mention one when I broke the rule. It is don't confirm your own records. This is one of our general data quality principles that we follow from the natural heritage programs. Just because you could get something wrong, and it's just a general good practice. If you have a lot of your own records that are ready to be confirmed, then reach out to us and we can connect you with, or connect your records to another one of our volunteer confirmers, or look at them ourselves. And as I mentioned before, for this group, I'm highly encouraging you to stick with those common species, and we will have a list of those as well, because with the permissions that we're giving you, it is all terrestrial plants for the state, but that, by default is going to include some of these higher priority species that need official agency confirmation for. So things like giant hogweed and kudzu and so forth. Those are things that we really want you to steer away from, because we do have regional and statewide experts that are keeping an eye out for those records. And of course, anytime you're unsure of the ID, you can reach out to us. We're more than happy to take a look at a record and give you our 2 cents on, if we think it's correct or not, and how we're identifying it from that particular photo. Use us as kind of a learning resource as well. So we do have this handout that we're going to send out to everyone, or actually maybe you're able to send out, after this webinar, so that you'll all have kind of the how-to instructions of what we just did. And it also includes, kind of a short list for now of what we're considering the common invasive species, so that you have something to start from. And actually on here, this is very handy, and Mitch I have to give him kudos for coming up with this idea. He was able to make a direct link to the map in IMAP of how it being filtered to just this list of species. And so if I click this link, and it's a really long URL, but if I click this and I'm already logged into IMAP, so that is kind of a key thing, then what it's going to do is it's going to load up the map configured to those common species and with just the unconfirmed records on. And so it's just kind of a quick way to load up all that information in one fair swoop. You do have to be logged in already for that little trick to work. But as you can see, so the map filtered down to just the New York species. You can see this little green funnel here on the filter records. That means that the filter is active right now. So it's active to these species just for New York. And it's great, you know, so now you can zoom in and you can start confirming, say, maybe in the area that you're used to. One thing that I've noticed is that once you zoom in, the confirmed green dots turn on automatically. So you just have to go to that map layers on and off to turn those off. But now you can click on those records and start confirming. It's actually a little bit easier with the email alerts. If you receive an email of, say, records, say you want records in your county, or an email alert of, you know, Japanese knotweed or garlic mustard every time it pops up in your county, then you can set up an email alert for that. And I realized I did not get into this in details, but you can go to the email alert system. You can hit that little add or edit an alert. And so what you want to do is add an alert, and you can actually create an alert that will send you records. So say if I want garlic mustard for Albany, that's the title to myself and the subject of the email. So IMAP unconfirmed records. You know, I like to have a good thing there. I want to say a daily digest, maybe 8 o'clock every morning. And because I'm a confirmer, I have this option to select unconfirmed records for my email alert. And then if I want, you know, I want a particular species. So if I want garlic mustard for my geography type, which is going to be my county. I know I'm going through this quickly and it's a little, there's a lot of options in there. But I believe we do have some help handouts on the internet to help you with this. But essentially, this will send you an email every day if somebody has entered garlic mustard records the day before for my county. Or, you know, you can pick other geography types as well. But I guess what I was getting at is from that email alert, sometimes it's easy for me to confirm records. I can just click on the record ID